I'm particularly interested in the plight of women of color. It's one thing to be disadvantaged as a white woman and feel all those death by 1,000 paper cuts. But for women of color, it's like 10 times harder. And I just want to know, what have you seen and what have you been able to do? Has your companies done anything specifically for that population, like made sure that you're treating that population uniquely and not just saying all women? So maybe you could start with Genentech. Do you folks have a specific initiative or not yet?
Yeah, it's really, it's interesting. Genentech has done we've done a unbelievable job in terms of really recognizing and moving women into leadership roles. So about 10 to 12 years ago, there were almost no women officers in the company. And now we've got about 14,000, 15,000 people in the company, about 12,000 in South San Francisco at our campus down there. And we have a big manufacturing facility across the bay over in Vacaville. So now 33% of the officers at Genentech are women. And it's phenomenal. And as I thought about how we've done this, I had some really interesting discussions with our CEO and some other leaders in the company over the last few days, and I'm still just sort of trying to pick their brains and say, how do we do this? And first of all, we were strategic about it. We were deliberate. The leadership team took ownership of it. And they set some targets and some goals around things that they wanted to do. But as I've really gotten to the heart of this, ultimately, everybody believed that this was critically important for basically the viability of the organization, that we wouldn't be an ongoing entity if we didn't recognize where the talent was. And then when we began to talk about women of color, and we're just beginning to have this dialogue as I'm sort of hitting the touch points around that, because it wasn't that I was leading this. As I was going around the organization and as I've talked to people outside of Genentech, it continues to pop up. Well, I know you're doing a lot with women. We need to have a dialogue around the particular challenges of women of color, and in particular African American women or Latino women or Asian women, and even subsets within those groups. And again, think about what we do at Genentech. We're developing and shaping molecules to create some of the most leading-edge, cutting-edge medicines. And this isn't to treat the Tasmanian devil in between your toes or some rash. We're treating some of the most difficult and debilitating diseases that you know about. I mean, these are oncology diseases: cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer. There are people walking around today on the earth because of stuff that we were able to do at Genentech. So this is serious stuff. And when you look at the demographic groups, African American men have a 60% higher incidence of prostate cancer. African American women have a greater incidence of uterine myoma and benign fibroid tumors and endometriosis and other. And so as you go across the board, if you want to do a good job of understanding and treating these diseases and developing the right kind of biologics and the right kinds of molecules, you need to have people in your organization who not only have an affinity for, but have a connection to these groups. And we haven't even begun to talk about breast cancer and how certain women of color over-index for certain kinds of breast cancers, and men get breast cancer also, not to the degree that women, not in the same proportion that women do, but when you're trying to attack trying to come up with the solutions to the kinds of problems that we're trying to attack, it's critically important that we understand not only what the patient populations look like and are going to look like, but also what the healthcare providers and the people who are treating the diseases are beginning to look like. And as we continue to look at who's getting the kinds of degrees and backgrounds and PhDs in terms of the people we need, increasingly those are going to be people who look a lot different than the people who have traditionally been in those roles. So as I've talked to women of color, these things continue to come up. And the challenge is that oftentimes white women will say, well, you know, you're dividing us. We're all going through the same stuff. And it still comes down to having somebody who can really moderate the dialogue to say, well, no, we're not dividing people. We're trying to look at particular challenges that unique groups of people are facing to be sure as we bring them into our culture and our environment that they can bring who they are to the table, because in some cases, who they are in terms of being a black woman or a Latino or an Asian woman may be critically important to the kind of solution we're developing to the medicines we're trying to create. So we're beginning to have that dialogue.
Great. Let me ask you, Andrew, you talked about sponsorship. Do you do any, just to take off on this issue of, do you do institutional approach to sponsorship, like it's a requirement of all partners, and then do you do anything special for women of color and women as you build your ally program?
I'll answer the women of color in the legal profession are just